We've had a general downside bias on this channel for the past month and a half. However, over the past few days, yes, indeed, I have been biased towards a high probability bounce at the $88,000 region. Bitcoin didn't put much of a bounce around that region. In fact, just very low 90s, and that was very pathetic indeed. So the question begs, as Bitcoin does head down to the next area of interest, the next implied target at $82,000, is that it? Is Bitcoin done here? Is it finally going to try for a bounce? And how fucked are those higher term timeframes for real? Like how absolutely wrecked are those higher term timeframes? Is the downside bias going to remain? Like the overall general trend for the downside bias going to remain? And indeed, actually, that will continue as Bitcoin continues to head down towards some pretty crazy numbers. So we're going to get into exactly how extreme this move is and put things into context. And then you can make the decision for yourself once we give out some probabilities here. But first things first, let's, as always, go towards those price action statistics for the daily here on Friday. And Friday is actually slightly in favor of positive closures over negative closures since the bull market began in 2023. However, I'm going to go out on a limb here and say this one's probably going to be negative. And if it is negative, well, your average loss for a negative closing Friday has already been hit at $85,000. Bitcoin did put in a nice bounce at $85,000. I believe it was something like, about $1,000 right here. Yeah, about 85 to 86.2. Yeah, so about $1,000. But again, if you are using this as a scalping tool, understand these are not for home run trades. I wouldn't expect $1,000 edge on those each and every time. A few $100, very, very likely. $1,000, yeah, you can get those for sure. But if you are going to be using this as a consistent scalper, I would go for the high probability move, which is a much, much lower move. Same thing on the price action pivots indicator, by the way. If you're using both of these tools to scalp intraday moves, they can be incredibly powerful. I've seen people actually, over the past few months, like actually start to really build up some accounts, which is pretty cool. Like I really love receiving that feedback. But again, for the people out there who are looking at these tools, first things first, try them out for free for 7 days in the link in the description below for Teachable. And then more importantly, create a strategy around it and don't get too greedy with those scalps because they ain't supposed to be home run trades. Anyways, on the topic of how extreme is this move? Well, we can actually put a literal number on that, which would be at right now, Bitcoin on the HPDR bands is at the 88.9% of historic returns range low, or at least that's what it hit as the low of the day thus far at 80,500 or so. So this move is really, really, really extreme. In other words, this is the type of move that we just do not see that often. In fact, over the past year, we've seen this area hit. I think it got hit during the April saga. Yeah, it got hit during the April saga. But before that, we'd have to go back to 2024. These things just do not happen that often. And when they don't happen that often, I feel very strongly that I should say, looking for further downside from here without a somewhat of a reprieve for Bitcoin, personally, I just think it's a guilty pleasure at this point. Yes, the trend is down. Yes, all higher term timeframes bias for trend is down. Obviously, we've been having that now for over a month. But no trend is just a straight line. A trend implies an ebb and a flow, a high and a low. And it, in this case, goes lower, but then it bounces and you just get a lower high, something like that. So within the context of this, we're at a pretty extreme move right now. And also I would acknowledge that when this sort of a setup fails what I was looking at before, where the daily volatility starts to contract and Bitcoin does not make a move towards a median, which is very, very rare occurrence. And then we see volatility expand yet again. We're probably very near the end of this current move in the short term. So again, these moves can take their time. If you're lobotomized more and leaving comments on this video thinking that something that I say about a bounce is like literally going to happen that day at that second, you're lost, sir, and it'd be better for you to just click on subscribe and get off this channel. I do these videos for the people who understand these sort of things, or the people who want to understand these sort of things, or have the patience to learn. So if you are that person, I'm very, 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 very happy for you, because we're going to go over some more things that I think are even more important right here. So now let's go over into a setup that we've seen many times on this channel over the past, I think, 4 years now, and it is the volatility versus stochastic momentum setup. It is a very simple setup in a way where we look for volatility represented by the BBWP indicator to go below extremes, which is 15 percentile or more, or less. And then once volatility starts to expand from that same number, so in this case, you see it go below and then expand over here, we look at the direction of the stochastic oscillator at that time, which was down, and that gives a high bias, a high probability bias for a big directional movement, of which we've seen this happen 12 prior times on the 5-day time frame in Bitcoin's history. And of those 12 times, 10 of them have played out with significant downside extension. So that gives you a win rate of about 83.33%. This one's probably, well, this one is also going to be a winner as well. The average move that typically occurs from this setup takes about 36 days. And the range for this move, or sorry, and also the average move that we experience from this is around 34.5%. So as of right now, and we measure this, by the way, on the downside from the high of the move. So from the high of the move to where we're at right now, that is day 45. So this is starting to overshoot that time. On top of that, if we actually just went from when the signal actually fired off to where we're at right now, it's about 25 days. But again, the way that I measure this one is from the high. So that's 45 days. So we're getting on the outlier of that time frame. And also when we look at the average move, 34.5%, well, if we measure from the high to where we're at right now, that is 36%. So a little bit above the average right now. And if we were to actually look at and calculate a first standard deviation, knowing that the standard deviation of this distribution is about 11.5%, well, that'd give us a range of interest between 23% all the way up to about 46%. So Bitcoin is basically smack dab within the middle of that data set. So I would say, again, this move, it's pretty extreme right here. It seems quite exaggerated to me, especially given last night's, drop off on the extension. When I see these sort of things occur, we're probably going to find a short-term basing point. Now, when I say short-term basing point, this might take a week to really occur. And I do think that Bitcoin is probably going to spike around the lows again, maybe like $82,000 sometime early next week, and then try for a bounce if that's going to be, what even happens to begin with. So yeah, a lot of things to be aware of right here. Also, the other thing that we're looking at on a general target was the bi-weekly red versus yellow moving average. Again, the same setup that we've seen on the 12-hour, the daily, the 2-day, the 3-day, the 5-day, the 8-day, and the 10-day. Now on the bi-weekly, which closes again on Sunday. And Bitcoin's already hit the 55 EMA, the green moving average right here, which is that minimum intended target. And this is how it's played on the past, by the way, as well, using the Quant Prime service to backtest this one. But because this one actually hasn't officially fired off just yet, and it will on Sunday, that means that we're probably going to see it spike this level again in the next 2-week period that follows starting Monday. So Bitcoin, what am I trying to say? Bitcoin's going to hang around here coming into early next week, most likely, probably spike that $82,000 or $83,000 number again. And then after that, you probably have the conditions allowable for a general bounce. And then the question becomes, where does the bounce go to? Where does the bounce go to? And for that, again, I would reference the daily HPDR. I know the last one didn't work, but that is such a rare occurrence. To me, that is a really strong signal that the next one that does occur is going to work out in that direction. But hey, feel free to take from this what you will and discard what you do not like. It's up to you to take what is valuable and discard the rest, if there is anything of value. But as of right now, the median is at $95,000. I suspect that coming into next week, we're going to see that come all the way down to $90,000 and probably even upper 80s. And that's likely going to be a general bounce target once Bitcoin kind of sets its feet in. But still, in the interim, give it a chance to kind of shake itself out. This is not going to happen in one day. It's not going to happen in like 1 week. These moves really do take multiple weeks to occur. So understand that, because otherwise you're going to be like some like literal fucking lobotomized retards. And I speak very directly to these people right now who think that these things just happen. Like if you talk about something on YouTube, it's going to just happen literally that day, that second, at the time of the posting of the video. It's like, whoa. Very unrealistic expectations here. Very unreasonable. But yeah, maybe it's just a misunderstanding. Maybe it's my own miscommunication. Who knows? But anyways, as far as that goes, yeah, Bitcoin, like I said, is at some pretty, crazy regions right now. When we go over here to the bi-weekly time frame, it's not just at the 55, it's also at the median as well. I mean, these numbers don't get tested all that much. And actually when they do, market cycle's typically over. So let's now switch on to the discussion of, or actually first, let's say in the odd event, Bitcoin does head lower from where it's at right now. Where would the next target be? Well, the next target would be about $75,000. Again, I really do feel strong there's going to be a bounce before that. It'd just be too much all in one go before like a, somewhat of a reprieve, somewhat of a pity bounce. But hey, if it does shoot out the old asshole right there, then I guess $75,000 is the next area of interest. Kind of crazy, but yeah, anything's possible at this point with Bitcoin. Anyways, I need to take a sip of this water, re-wetten my mouth, and speak some more. All right. Yeah, so we got that. Now, again, I want to go over the higher term timeframes here again, because I just think this is really Really, really important for just long-term buys. Here's a monthly MACD. If Bitcoin doesn't bounce above $97,500 by the end of this month of November, which is like 9 days away, we will see the MACD cross the downside, according to Caretaker's reverse MACD. This has happened 1, 2, 3, 4 times in Bitcoin's past, which have all aligned with market cycle over. In fact, the high for Bitcoin was in many months before that. And generally, Bitcoin took, many months after that to reach its final destination on the low side. In fact, the percent drawdown from the MACD cross to the next major low is actually quite uniform here. This first one in 2014 was about 65%. The one over here in 2017, 2018 was about 59.5%. This was the Rona one right here. I don't know if I want to include this one just because, it's like that was a bit of a black swan, but that was 46%. But I'd probably exclude that from the data set. And if we go to 2021, from there to the low, that was almost 60% as well. So, all of those were coming in around about 60%. If Bitcoin crosses here, pending this month's closure, but let's say it's somewhere around here, 60% to the downside would put Bitcoin like $36,000. Seems kind of far away to me, but hey, anything's possible in this world. Regardless of that, if we do look at this from the price action pivots trendline extensions perspective, which again, I do think is a phenomenal tool for especially for short-term scalping, but also for just looking at patterns and trends, we can see that we do have a rising channel here. And if we do have a rising channel, we can actually make an implied target based upon the break of this, which is probably going to happen by the end of this month, assuming Bitcoin does close below about 95,000. And if it does, your implied target is going to be all the way down towards 61,000 US dollars, that is, and change. Also, green 55 EMA is coming in around that region as well. So good confluence there. So that would be kind of like a minimum bear market target, or I really want to avoid the word bear market or bull market. I just don't like, it's just uptrend or downtrend, fuck all the rest of it. It's just bullshit that people like to say on YouTube to, raise emotions. Again, on this channel, we're taking things one leg at a time. But yeah, that's what I'm looking at right there. Also of interest here, keep in mind the bi-monthly stochastic momentum also crossed the downside for the first time, not pending. It already happened on the November open. That's happened 3 other times in Bitcoin's history. Again, that was, the 2014 high, the 2017 high, the 2021 right before the high. And over here, is this the high? Probably yes. At least for a while. I don't think Bitcoin's going back above 126 anytime soon. And I feel very, very strongly that at some point in this before the end of December, not before the end of December, before the end of February 2026, we're very likely to see at least 69,000 hit the yellow 21 EMA here. And I mean, maybe even lower over time if things get really nasty. Anyways, other than that, I just want to remind myself as well that the daily crown oscillator is now in territories that we've just not seen at all throughout this bull market. All this bull market, we've seen this crown oscillator bottom at this red line here, which has correlated with some of these major lows throughout this current uptrend. This one coming much further to the downside does imply a change of behavior. And if it's a change of behavior and the prior behavior was uptrend, then that would be indicative of a downtrend. Again, it's not going to be straight down. There's going to be like a bounce at some point. It comes up here, but the bias on a bounce has to be towards a lower high and turning back down, something like that. So I would just be very, 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 very cognizant of this, because if you're hearing people say that this is like the low and it's going to go up only from here, it's unlikely, man. It's very, very unlikely. Even on the daily right here, as my arrows have pointed out, this is full-on bearish posturing for all major moving averages. I mean, they had the switch over on the local high, which was at 107.5. That's your last significant lower high. That is to say, Bitcoin is just bearish as long as you're below there. There's no downtrend as long as you're below there. There's just no fucking ands, ifs, or buts about it. You can rally all the way up towards $100,000, for example. I'm not saying it's going to, but if you did, still a lower fucking high. That's the problem. So just have to be realistic with the expectations here, because as long as you're below there at this point, it's down, and be expecting lower highs. If Bitcoin were to reclaim that number, okay, yeah, maybe we do have a real change of behavior, but until that happens, there ain't no change in this behavior. and that's just, it is what it is. Other than that, we can ramble on with some traditional markets. I believe NASDAQ and SPY futures have both started to break down in unison. Same thing here. Your last lower high from Wednesday's high is very significant as long as you're below there. Just be expecting some downside. Yes, short term wants to bounce. Yes, I get that. It wants to bounce here. But, that is a head and shoulders, and your implied target is going to be lower. It's going to be towards like 23,000 bucks or so. I'd guesstimate right now. SPY futures, same thing. Same thing right here. Short term probably bounces up, but as long as you're below Wednesday's high, that is your last significant lower high, and there is an implied target down to like 63 or 63 and a half. So, market's coming down. If these major indices come down, do you think Bitcoin's gonna not come down? I mean, yes, because it's the real gold. No, gold is the real gold. Gold's actually up for the day, so maybe gold actually does matter. You know what? I should buy some fucking gold. All right, it's time to buy gold. Fuck Bitcoin. We're all in gold. I'm kidding, but yeah. Anyways, I think we'll sign off on that note. As always, I'm gonna wish everyone the best. We'll be back on next week with some live streams. It's been so frustrating this week. Setting up my new place and everything and not having my usual battle station. It's like I'm flying with one eye blind, and I just want to get back into the swing of things, back to the live streams. So much fun, man. Makes me feel a lot more connected with the community and also connected with just the markets as well. So as of right now, it's like, oh, I can't even like see things in the way that I want to see them, but whatever. It is what it is. A little bit more set up to go, and we shall have the new battle station completely ready and operational. And from there, it is all fucking green lights, baby. I'm very excited about that. So other than that, I want to wish you the best. Oh, and also remind you, next Monday, we will be having, I know it's a big secret, but we will be having a Black Friday sale. So if you're considering any one of these programs or services, in the Teachable link in the description below, consider waiting just a few days. You'll save yourself a few bucks, and also you also get a free trial anyway. So all good in the hood. At that note, I will be signing off. Take care, much love, and see you hopefully Monday.